Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this was more UI stuff. So you're familiar, I've made the MercedUI framework library, and then what I did is I created simple components, which is kind of had one simple function for creating components. And what I did is I've been exploring sort of other ways to kind of do the same thing to try to make it simpler and easier and easier and easier for people to use this. So I created a class called MercedElement, which has been added. So SimpleComponent and MercedElement have both been added to the MercedUI library. So at 10 kilobytes, you get the whole thing. You get all the different tools I've created. That includes form tool, capture props, get query hash, all these really cool tools to do cool stuff on the front end. But if you strictly are just looking for a way to make components, then either SimpleComponent or MercedElement is the tool for you. So if you haven't seen the video on SimpleComponent, that's in there, but you'll still have those two tools in the MercedUI library. So at 10.4 kilobytes, you're getting SimpleComponent and MercedElement along with everything else that's inside MercedUI. Separately, you can get SimpleComponent, which is the smallest, at 1.4 kilobytes. There you can make a very simple component with React with state and props, and then that's that. With MercedElement, you can create a component with React with state and props, but also has I've also built into the class the ability to have reducers, kind of like Redux, built into each component. But there's also like a global state, that's a static property in the class that has its own reducer ability to set itself. So that way you have this global state that you can then register with components, very similar to the global store in MercedUI, except built into the class, which makes it a little bit easier to use. So let's show you how to use all of that. So I am going to go to here to UiPrac. Let's see what library do I have connected to this right now. Let's go to the index.html. Right now I have SimpleComponent. I'm going to connect MercedUI for the moment because I have MercedElement in there. So that way it's just easier. Okay. Let's clear out the body. We'll come back and do this all over again. Save. Let's go to our app.js. Okay, so this was like SimpleComponent. Okay, so that's how you would create a component in SimpleComponent. It's very small, very compact, probably as compact as it can possibly get. The only issue with that is with SimpleComponent and MakeLive component from MercedUI library, you're interpolating a lot of strings. Basically, the way I did it is that the function plops all the information you give into it into a large string that's evaluated, which I find if you wanted to use something like Parcel or Webpack can be a little tricky because you have to adjust how you write some things because the bundler will change the names of certain things, and which will cause it not to work the way you expect it. If you're just using it as a script tag, which is the way I recommend to, it works beautifully. MercedElement isn't so dependent on string interpolation, so shouldn't run into any real issues with bundlers and stuff like that. So it's probably, if you really want to kind of do everything in npm and have all your imports and exports, MercedElement is probably going to be your go-to. So how would I make a component? First, what you want to do is you basically need three pieces. You need your initial state. So I'm going to just do here, we'll just say our initial state, const initial state equals hello world. Okay, and then you need your builder function. That's what builds the template. So const builder, and again you can name these whatever you want. Okay, const builder, and this is a function that always takes state then props. Okay, and then basically we would just return our template or build your template however you like, because it returns a template string. And I'll just keep it real simple. So h1, we're going to interpolate that state property, state.hello, and then h2 will also have a props property called users, just to kind of show that both work. Okay, cool. And then if you wanted to add other data, you could just do whatever you want. Again, all that matters is the function returns your template at the end. How you render that template, what logic you use, that's on you. Okay, have fun with it. Cool, so there's my builder function. And then if I want to, this is optional, you can have a reducer. So you can have a built-in reducer function into your component. So that way you can add additional logic and pass in a payload every time you update your state. Okay, so well, instead of passing in a set state value, you could just pass in this reducer that will, if you've used Redux before, you know where this is going. So Const Reducer, and basically the reducer is always passed in the old state and a payload. Okay, standard convention is that the payload is an object and you have a property called action in it. So usually what you would do is you do something like, I'm just going to do an if statement because I'm just going to do one example. If payload dot action equals goodbye. Okay, if that's the case, then what it's going to do, it's going to return return a new state, except in this case, the property hello will be goodbye. Okay, in any other situation, it'll just return the old state, so that way we don't end up stateless. Okay, cool. There's my reducer function. Cool. So once I have those three pieces, now I can define my element. You could define them in your element, but this is just looks cleaner. And we'll kind of get the point across of how this works. So what you're going to do is we'll just say const, we're going to call this component test. Okay, and this extends MercedElement. Okay. Oh, not const. Class. I was wondering why the colors looked off. There we go. Okay, then you're going to do is we're going to define the constructor. I'm going to override the constructor, no parameters. But you will have to invoke the parent constructor, which does take 3 parameters, which is, let's see if I remember the order right. I might have to check. Let's see here. So let's go look at the documentation. README, Markdown preview. There it is. Let's flip through this. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Class, site builder, form tool, MercedElement. Here we go. And it's the builder function, the state, then the reducer. That's the order. So in that case, I would just do builder, initial state, reducer. There you go. And there my component is essentially created. Okay? That's it. Okay? That's my component. But right now it's not an element I can use in the DOM yet. We'll come back to that in a second. But just to kind of give you a little tour, like if you wanted to add more stuff in the constructor, you could do that. If you wanted to use like lifecycle functions, you could just use it like a normal web component, like if you were using the standard web component API. So I could just define my connected callback. And my connected callback is essentially what happens when the component mounts. If I want to do what happens when the component dismounts, that would just be disconnected callback. And then there's a couple other ones that you can just actually read the JavaScript documentation. Those are built into JavaScript web components. So just look up the HTML element class, which MercedElement extends the HTML element class. Okay, so you can see what those methods are. But that's the class. Now if you want to use it on the DOM, there is a static method, static MercedElement called .register. Okay, and then basically just pass in the name that you want in the DOM. So has to be something with kebab case. It has to have a dash. It's just a standard web component must. So we're just going to call it test s, as you've seen in the other videos. And then we pass in the class test. Cool, and that registers it. So now I should be able to use it in the HTML. Okay. So we'll put that here. Test Okay, so let's test that out by opening it in Chrome so far. And then we'll get into sort of more of the fancy stuff. Index.html. Is that the one I want to open? Yes. Show in file manager. Open with Google Chrome. Okay, and it's not showing up yet. So let's see here. Let's examine. Inspect console, type error, Merced.element.register is not a function. Oh, did I mess up what the name of the function was? I think it might have been gregister. Let's go back to the README. Oh, make tag. Make tag's the function. Registers for something else. Make tag. Make tag. There you go. That's going to make the HTML tag. Save. Yay for documenting my own code. I don't make my mistakes with my own stuff. Okay, there you go. See, there it is. Right now there's no props, so that's why that's undefined. So I need to go back to my HTML, put in the props, the user property, user, because that's how I did it. User props, Alex, Merced. Save. And again, just to show you where I define that, okay, right here I said props.user, so it's looking for a user property. Okay, and how did I do that? I'm using the capture props function I made in MercedUI. So with the full MercedUI library, you can get the capture props function freestanding. Actually, technically, it's here as well. And you can use that capture props to capture the properties of any element, which is kind of fun. But these components have it built in. It already kind of captures its own props, so you don't have to think about it, which is nice. But if you wanted to, it's available. Okay, so let's go back over here. Let's refresh. And there it is. See, it captures the props. Very nice. Cool. There is my element. Okie dokie. So, and again, if you wanted to create, like, if you wanted to style this, you would just put that in the template. You would just put a style tag in the template and style it. That kind of thing. So let's see here. What do I want to do next? Let's show state. Okay, so basically every component has a couple functions. So let's say we wanted to let's create a button. Okay, and on click, this button's going to update the state. So actually, I need to put an ID. We need to actually capture this element. So I'm going to give this an ID of test. Save. Then I need to go to my app here. And we're going to say const test equals document dot get element by ID test. Cool. Nice. Now with that, we can do something like this. Test dot. In this case, I just use sort of the same React convention, so set state to set the state. So in this case, I do set state. It'll just change the state to goodbye. Oh, actually, we have to pass in the new state. So new state, hello, and we'll just call this one cheese. Just to differentiate it from the reducer. Test.setState. So it'll just set the new state to be with the hello property cheese. Okay, and I click that button. And I didn't finish the button, did I? Oh no, wait, what did I do here? I accidentally put this in the wrong place. Cut. I want it that way. This should be here. Test dot set state. Okay, and then I need to actually complete the button. Click me / button save. Okay, and if you notice, there's like default styling that's coming from the milligram CSS library. I just like to slap that on, makes things look pretty. Okay, cool. So now when I click this, it should change the state to goodbye for that component. This is on one component, so it's only changing that component state. So that one component, that one instance is going to re-render. Cool. Nice. Okay, but if I had like 3 of these, so let's say let's make 3 tests. And this will be test 2, test 3. Okay, and this will say Alex Merced 2, Alex Merced 3. Okay. So when I refresh the UI, see there I have 3 instances, but only this one is the one that this state changes. So only that one will change. Sweet cheese. So that's state at a component level. And then again, I could also use the dispatch function. So I can use test.dispatch because it's built into the component. It will use the reducer we passed in. And just like a normal Redux type thing, I pass in my payload, which my payload is going to be action goodbye. Okay, action goodbye. Save. Okay, and then basically now when I click the button, it's only going to run the dispatch for this component, but it still runs my reducer, changes the state for that one component. Cool. So you have all that built in right into your component. Very nice. Okay, not bad for again, the standalone library is 3 kilobytes. If you get the MercedUI library, which has this and a whole bunch of other stuff, then that's about 10 kilobytes, which is still a lot less than Preact. Preact is the mini version of React, and that's still 16 kilobytes. So you're getting a whole lot of coolness here. And the benefit is because this is built on the native web component API, so there's a lot of things I don't have to redefine. And then plus, there's no dependencies. Okay, since this is all built on top of native JavaScript stuff, you don't have to worry about other libraries becoming old. I don't have any dependencies in here as far as other third-party libraries. Okay. So now let's show you the global state stuff. Okay. So the MercedElement itself class has its own global state. Okay. So that state can then be used to feed into any component you want. You have to register those components, and it should be like G register, because G for global. So all the functions always have global on them. So oh no, it's just register. So there we go. Okay, so MercedElement.register, and then we put in the class. So what I need to do is just create the other. Okay. So this will be test 2, test 3, and then we're grabbing the ones with the ID test 2, test 3. So MercedElement.register test MercedElement.register test 2. I mean, I could do a loop if I wanted to, but why not? MercedElement.register test 3. Okay. So what this does is that MercedElement has this registry, and the registry keeps track of all components that are using the global state. So instead of using its own individual component state, it'll start feeding off this MercedElement's global state to render itself. Okay, sweet. Okay, so that's that. So now when I do this, instead of here being test.dispatch, we can go do it off the global state. So it would be MercedElement.gSetState, and again, what we'll do is we'll pass it in. New state will be hello cheese. Okay, but since all 3 of these components have been registered with the global state, it should automatically update all 3. So let's refresh. MercedElement.register. Did I just write it wrong? Let's take a look at the actual code. Let me just go to the MercedElement. MercedElement.js. Set state. Clear form. No, that's the form tool. Static G dispatch. G set state. Clear register. Oh, it is G register. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so I need to fix the README. So let's just do that real quick. Fix the README. So this should be G register. Let me just confirm that. G register. G register. Yes. Cool. Okay, and then I just also need to do that in the other docs, but I can do that after this. Okay. So let me go back to my app.js and fix these to G register. G register. So everything's generally G for global. That is, you're dealing with the global state. Okay. And now that should work. And see, all 3 of them change now. Okay, I can now update the state, and it'll update all my registered components. Now, because this is a static property on MercedElement, there's only one global state. Okay, so it's one central store, in a sense, kind of like the Redux store. If you're using the MercedUI library, there's the gstore function, so that way you can create multiple global stores if you wanted to. Okay, everything's a little bit more flexible when you have a full library, but also that means it's more complicated. But this gives you sort of a nice exposure to all of it. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Now you could also use dispatch. So I could do gdispatch, a global, like, the only difference is that you don't have to you don't define a set reducer. You have to pass in the reducer into the function. So basically we would use the reducer that we already defined. Okay, so the reducer, and then we pass in our payload. So that'd be hello, goodbye. Okay, so we're just using that same function as we did on an individual component, but now we're using it on the global state. So now when I hit refresh and I click me, it should run that reducer and change all three of these to goodbye. Undefined. Let's see here. Let's run through that logic. So let's see here. Reducer. Let's go back to my app.js and take a look at reducer. Reducer takes the old state, payload, action, goodbye, return. Did I spell goodbye wrong? Hello, goodbye. I guess I have one idea what might it be. Let me just take a look at how I did gdispatch. So reducer, payload, there's the old state and the payload. So that should be fine. G set state reducer, this.g state. That's the current state, current global state, which is that. And then there's the payload, which I'm passing in. And then that's getting passed in, the old state in the payload. If payload dot action. Oh, that's why. This needs to be action. Save. There we go. That should make it work. I was like, I thought this was all set up right. Okay. So let's refresh. Now when I click this, all three should turn to goodbye. Goodbye. Okay, so you see that you technically have state and the reducer dispatch ability on the component level and on the global level. Okay, and it's pretty easy to define a component. So all that, and again, just for that, it's a 3 kilobyte file size. Okay, so you're not increasing your bundle by like 50 kilobytes with like React, or over 100 kilobytes with like Angular. 3 kilobytes. Okay, if you want all the bells and whistles with MercedUI, 10 kilobytes. Not a bad deal. Okay. Cool. That's that. Again, you can find the documentation on GitHub. So if you look up MercedElement on GitHub, these are also available on NPM. So you can download the NPM libraries and then have your favorite bundler, Webpack, Rollup, Parcel bundle it for you. So that's that. Hopefully you guys like that. Use it. Have a great day and enjoy.